Today we're making 50-50 dressing. That's half cornbread and half regular bread. Let's get to it. But first, we have some birthdays from our family this past week. So happy birthday to our cousin Joseph. His birthday was on the 16th. Also, our nephew Dustin, his birthday was on the 19th. And our beautiful and wonderful friend and landlord, Liz Taylor, her birthday was also on the 19th. And our amazing mom, Neela, her birthday was on January 20th. We love you, Mom. We miss you. We wish we could have been there for your birthday. Hopefully we can soon. Our hope is to be able to come home and visit more. So that's what we are praying for. We love you and we hope you had a wonderful birthday. Happy birthday to all of you. We love you and you are important to us. You guys are all amazing. Now let's get to it. Welcome back to Cooking with Kayla D. I'm Kayla, and this is my husband, Randy. My disclaimer. If you haven't done so, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you get all the up-to-date episodes as they release. Your ingredients for the bread, we're making this from scratch. 1 cup of warm water, 1 tablespoon of sugar, 1 packet of instant dry yeast, 3 tablespoons of flour plus 2 cups of flour. You want that separated. Also a teaspoon of salt and a tablespoon of oil. To start our loaf of bread, you're going to want that warm water at about 90 degrees, 85 to 95 is fine, so it doesn't burn your yeast. Then you're going to go ahead and add in that sugar, and you'll want to mix that well until that sugar is dissolved. Now we'll go ahead and add in the 3 tablespoons of flour and also our yeast packet, and we'll mix this well and combine it. You just want to make sure that that flour and yeast is well combined into the water and that it is not separated, that it is all good. Once you have it all well combined and mixed up, go ahead and cover it with a towel and let it sit for 5 to 10 minutes. And now that it has sit for 5 to 10 minutes and our yeast is activated and we have some bubbles on the top and it's foamed up, it is time to go ahead and finish mixing our ingredients in. So first you want to get started with the rest of your flour, which is the 2 cups of flour, the teaspoon of salt, and a tablespoon of oil. And this is just a simple, easy, let's just get it done recipe. I just went ahead and stuck my hand in and mixed it around until everything was combined. I did not need this. I mixed it until it was combined. I rolled it into a ball, and then I went ahead and lathered it with a little bit of oil and put it back in the bowl for covering. The reason we are doing this is because you're not making bread that you're going to be eating and serving. You just want a simple loaf of bread that you're going to be able to cube up and dry out for your dressing. So just go ahead and mix it all together, get it into a ball, and it's easy. It should only take you about 2 minutes. After you pour a little oil, I just did like a teaspoon of oil and then just smeared it all around the ball. I didn't put any in my bowl this time. I just did it like that. I put my bread into the bowl and covered it, and I set it aside to let it rise in a warm place for 30 minutes. You don't even have to let it rise as long. It is going to fluff right up and just give you the perfect size loaf. So then I also did the cornbread, and for my cornbread I went with just a Jiffy box of muffin mix. It was just easy, simple. You don't need a full batch of cornbread because you're doing a small loaf of bread, so you're going to be doing a small batch of cornbread. I followed the box's instructions with the milk and the egg and mixed it up. So then I went ahead and added in the cornbread, and now I'm going to mix that up and make sure that that is combined well. Once I have that done, I'm going to get my baking sheet out. I'm going to spray it with some oil and go ahead and pour my cornbread batter right into it. This is the size of cornbread sheet I used, so it is thin and makes perfect cubes. Also, I followed the directions on the box for the baking instructions and just did what it said to do for the muffins, and it came out just fine. So go ahead and do that. Spread that out in your pan. If you don't have this pan or something similar to it, go ahead and use that. You can also use like a pie pan and just make a little bit thicker of a cube. So when you're cutting it, you just cut it into smaller pieces because they're going to be tall. And that's just how you do that. It's very simple. It's very easy. So I went ahead and spread it out as well as I could get it. Once I had it spread out, I went ahead and did a jiggle and a tap for baking. And now our bread dough is done rising, so you're going to go ahead and uncover that and punch it just like you would a regular bread. Go ahead and take it out of the bowl, and you do want to go ahead and knead this like 3 or 4 times and then get it rolled up into a loaf. It will only take about 30 seconds to a minute to do this. You're just trying to restructure it and get whatever oil was on the outside back into the ball. Once you have it kneaded pretty well, you're going to naturally just roll it into a little rectangle loaf, pinching the seams to make sure that they are completely closed up. Roll it over like that. There you go. Get your loaf pan out. Go ahead and spray it or line it with parchment paper, however you want to do it, and get your bread inside of that. Then you'll want to cover that and let that sit for about 20 to 30 minutes in a warm spot to rise up. Now our cornbread is out of the oven, so we're going to go ahead and pull that cornbread out of the sides. You want to pull it away from the sides all the way around. I also took my little spatula and I kind of very gently scraped from the bottom as well. You can use parchment paper when you bake yours, so it is a lot easier, and you can just pull the paper out for your cutting. I did it like this, and I just used a very easy spatula to go ahead and kind of lift all the way around just to make sure it wasn't sticking in the pan. Let the cornbread cool down, and while that was cooling, our bread had risen, and that's what it looked like. So we're going to go ahead and just stick it right into the oven. I'm not going to be putting any kind of wash or anything on it. I'm just going to stick it into the oven and cook it as the directions said so in the description area. So you just want to go ahead and get that to baking. Our bread is now done baking, so we're going to go ahead and use a nice little paddle again to pull the bread right out of that container. And then you want to take your loaf pan and put that away, and you want to put your loaf of bread somewhere where it can cool off. But first I want to go ahead and test out the crust. So I go ahead and just gently pat it all the way around the top, and I went ahead and patted the sides and the ends just to make sure that it had a good crust and a good texture on it, and it did. So I flipped it upside down. I checked the bottom as well. It makes a nice kind of like sound as when you bang on a watermelon. So now that is ready. We'll let it cool, and our cornbread has now cooled off, so we're going to go ahead and cut that up. I'm going to use my spatula just like I used earlier to go ahead and do this, again by scraping underneath to make sure it isn't sticking. Once I know that it isn't sticking, we can go ahead and start cutting in and making the cubes. I first flipped mine into another cookie sheet just so I could make sure I didn't have it sticking real bad. As you can see, we only had one little piece that was sticking, so that's perfect. Then I went ahead and started just doing like I'm making breadsticks. I just started doing little lines all the way down, and then I continued to do that in the other direction as well until I formed cubes. Once you have all your cubes cut, then you go ahead and start separating them onto your cookie sheets, spreading them apart, and you'll probably need to use 2 cookie sheets, and go ahead and do that. And you want to get them spread apart to where they're not touching each other so you can dry them out in the oven. It takes a few minutes, but it's not that long, maybe 2 or 3. Get them spread around. Once you have them spread around, you're going to go ahead and bake them at 250 for about 2 to 3 hours so they dry out, but keep an eye on them. And now our bread, it's cooled down, so we're going to test it. Take a slice off, and at this point, the steam coming out of it, it still was not cool enough, but I went ahead and tested it. Look at that bread. It's beautiful, and it didn't even take a lot of work. You didn't even have to use a mixer. Look at how bouncy that is. We're going to let that cool off a little bit more. I'll go ahead and eat the end, but shh, don't tell nobody. And now our cornbread is out of the oven. It took 2.5 hours to dry that out. So I'm going to go ahead and test that. I'm dropping it. And yep, it is crispy. It is hard, just like a crouton. And that's exactly what we want. So I'm going to go ahead and get me a 1 gallon size Ziploc bag and start bagging that up. And the heat comes out of these very fast, so you don't have to worry about letting them sit and cool down. Just put them in your gallon size bag or in a container, a Tupperware container, and just leave the lid cracked or the bag open until your breadcrumbs are done. So I just left mine sitting on the counter open until I had my breadcrumbs out of the oven, and then we go on from there. So it's time to cut our bread up. It's cooled down. I'm going to go ahead and cut it into like 1-inch slices. After I have it cut into slices, you'll see here, I'm cutting it into strips and then also into cubes. And then we're going to go ahead and lay that out on our cookie sheets, just like we did our cornbread, making sure that they are not touching so that we can go ahead and dry these out. Again, your oven should still be on 250 degrees Fahrenheit, and you want to dry your bread out. This may take a little longer than the cornbread, for 2 to 3 hours, so keep an eye on it, checking it about every hour on the hour, and that way you can make sure it's not overcooking. You want to make sure you just dry it out to where it's like a crouton, but it's not browning. Once your bread is out of the oven, let it cool off for about 20 minutes. The bread you will have to cool off. Once it is cooled off and you have your little bread croutons, you go ahead and stick them right on top of your cornbread cubes, right into your Ziploc bag. Then you'll go ahead and seal this up and store it until you need it. I made mine several days ahead of time, so then it was ready to go when I was ready to prepare this dressing. And now for the rest of our dressing ingredients, you'll need 1 to 2 cups of chopped celery, 1/2 to 1 cup of chopped onion, 1 tablespoon of fresh chopped garlic, 2 tablespoons of fresh thyme, roughly chopped, 2 tablespoons of fresh rosemary, roughly chopped, 1 tablespoon of sage powder, 2 teaspoons of pepper, 2 teaspoons of salt, 3 cups of chicken broth, 1.5 to 1 cup of fresh cranberries. And I forgot to add a tablespoon of sugar that you'll want to mix into your cranberries to kind of get the tardiness of the cranberries off. So I put my cranberries in a bowl after I wash them, and I go ahead and add a tablespoon of sugar to that, and then I mix it around. And that way you can make it to where it's more sweet. I've made this before without doing that step, and it was very tart. So having that sugar coating on there is very important. Now, if you are sugar-free, go ahead and use your sweetener of your choice. It works out great. You can also substitute fresh cranberries for dried cranberries. That is actually really good too. We have had dressing that way several times. You'll want yourself a really large mixing bowl that you can go ahead and mix your dressing in. I had a large glass Pyrex one as I'm using here. And you go ahead and add your breadcrumbs to that. You'll go ahead and add your chopped celery and also your chopped onion. And then we're going to go ahead and add in our chopped garlic. And then our herbs, we're adding in our thyme and our rosemary. Then you're going to want to add in your sage powder at this point. I used about a tablespoon of sage powder. You think it sounds like a lot, but it actually isn't. Then your pepper and your salt. And once you have that in there, you'll go ahead and gently mix that around. Make sure you're not spilling it, but you want to combine those seasonings and the herbs throughout your breadcrumbs. Once you have that well combined, you'll want to go ahead and add in your chicken stock. And then also your cranberries. And then go ahead and mix this up well and be gentle about it. Some people like theirs a little bit more moist and some more dry. So if you would like to add more chicken stock, you can do so. I advise that when doing so that you would only do about 1/4 cup of water at a time or chicken stock at a time until you get the desired texture you're looking for. Remember, it will continue to dry out in the oven as it bakes, but you don't want it to be all gummy either. So just be careful not to put too much water or chicken stock into your dressing. Next, you want to get out the baking sheet that you're going to use and line it with Pyrex paper or spray it with some oil. I went ahead and used a pie dish for mine. I have a larger pie dish, and I went ahead and just piled on my dressing to form almost like a mountain or like a really high loaded pie. Like you can see here, it is just like a big old giant mound, but that is how we wanted to serve it. So that's how we did it. Went ahead and got some foil out to cover it up. That way I can cook it for 20 minutes covered and then 10 minutes uncovered. It does only take 30 minutes to cook this in your oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Also, if you want the best bone broth recipe ever to use for this, I'll have a link right here to the left and also in the description area. And there it is after it's cooked. Delicious, wonderful 50-50 dressing. Stay tuned for some photos of Myrtle Beach, South Carolina here at the end.
Every way of man is right in his own eyes, but the Lord weighs the hearts. Proverbs 21:2.
And here are some beautiful photos by our neighbor, Miss Debbie, and her companion, Miss Lucy, of Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. First off, we have the sunrise, we have midday, and then we also have the sunset. Thank you for being here on Cooking with Kayla D. As always, we say stay in that kitchen and keep on cooking. We would like to join you to be a part of our community if you haven't done so yet. So we would ask that you would subscribe to our channel. And you can do that by clicking the icon here on the left to subscribe. And you can also click the icon here on the right for some more delicious recipes. And until next time, God bless.